Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you very. I do want to acknowledge all the good work that's been done in schools. I see it for myself. I've had a lot of interaction with schools in what they do, and they do really, really good work. But I am concerned, like everybody else, that when things go wrong, where there's support's there for them and they're basically held out to dry for things that maybe are way beyond their control in terms of addressing them. I just want to ask you, in terms of the reports that have been done in COVID for the impact of COVID, Craig, are they cross-sectional? Have we comparisons between this country, this state, and other countries in terms of the impact?
The Institute of Public Health is the island of Ireland, so it works on data from both the north and the south and talks about those. The others are specific to Ireland, but there are, it wouldn't take you very long to find studies in the UK. They're far more plentiful actually than studies done on Ireland, which will give you similar statistics and similar results, actually.
Okay, and look at them. And just in terms of the importance of the homeschool liaison officer and the impactfulness there, has there been measurements done on the difference there that the homeschool liaison officers have made?
I'm not aware of any.
Mental health.
No, I don't think there's been empirical studies, but there would be very much. We would hear it on the ground as we travel around the country in schools, and it very much would have been discussed in the review of DESH that was done over the last while. But I suppose the two educational support services tests are operating that system now, but I don't think there is empirical data, but there would be certainly very much a lot of anecdotal and information.
I think it would be good for that to be done as well, because I think the homeschool liaison officer is one of the best developments that I've seen in the last 30-40 years in education here.
I think that the fact that NEPs have changed their focus in the last year or so to be looking at emotionally based school avoidance, what we'd have called school refusal up to now, is probably an indication that this is something that needs attention and that students are not getting to school. And that would be across schools rather than just those with homeschool liaison officers.
I just find it very difficult to understand that maybe if there's a written plan for a child, which obviously there should be in terms of what the plan of action is, that then wouldn't be shared with the homeschool liaison officer or the team within the school. I just can't imagine what's the point in doing the plan if you don't involve really key people in the implementation of that plan. It's a kind of it just seems a crazy situation.
It's an interesting point, but there is firewalling of information going on in schools now that wouldn't have previously. So that's why some investigation, I suppose, of this or some work on it would be useful for us all, I think.
Yeah, I think it needs to be done urgently. I want to ask you around, because we've been contacted by many researchers undertaking PhD in education psychology. So unlike the clinical and potentially soon the counselling psychology, educational psychologists that are predominantly hired by the public education system have received no support, and they're required to pay extremely high fees of over €11,000, and they're not reimbursed for their work. If this is compared to the HSE, where you have the clinical psychologists studying to the same doctoral level, and they get 60% fee cover and a modest salary, would you see a similar approach to education and counselling psychologists being trained to work in the education system? And why is it different?
It used to be like that. The route into education psychology used to be, and it wasn't initially at PhD level, it was at master's level, but there was funding set aside. There was even with pay to go and pursue that course. Again, another victim of the cuts, unfortunately, that was never restored. We've almost forgotten to look back at things that worked well pre the guillotine that went down at the time, and things that did work well. That was one of them. The routes into education psychology are very, very challenging. You know, if we can't get teachers to stay in the country to teach, ask them to stay and then to give up that pay and to go and pay exorbitant fees to become, for the privilege of becoming an education psychologist, and then the challenges of staying within the system then because of the demands that are placed in them. So I think we need a root and branch review of all of these entry-level programmes for speech and language, for OT, psychology, right across the board. I know the PSI have made very strong recommendations into routes into their services, but it's across the board. Like, there's no point in me at one level asking for school-based support services if we're just creating more vacancies on education posts or on the recruitment websites, because it's the entry point in, and also we've made very strong submissions in relation to mid-career conversion courses, you know, where people who may have expertise. I have a degree in psychology as well as being a school principal. Right. You know, there are many people with multiple qualifications that could do a conversion course. So we need to be very, very creative with all of the entry routes: speech and language, educational psychology, OT, right across. If we're to tackle it right now, because the vacancies are right across the system, when we put our hands out there for support, and all we get is a place on a waiting list.
Yeah, exactly. That's no good to any child,
No.
and it's something that we will take up with Minister Harris. I think he's here tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
He's actually in the Dáil later on tonight. We get an opportunity to do that again.
And we have done a huge amount of advocacy, Deputy, on that.
Yeah.
And we would be, I work in the SIPSI, as I say, and the SIPSIs do work. They are integrating the services, they are pulling the service together. My own SIPSI just last week launched a pack to support schools around school refusal in the Fingal area. So there are good nuggets, and I don't want to just come in with a tale of despair, but I suppose what we're looking at is improvement and to look where we can direct our energies.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McLeod.